would be beneficial to the society. And Joseph talked about a major international project, the Habitat project, that will help so many poor people to at least to have housing. And then I will provide another perspective because I don't have any product. I don't have any major project, but as Dr. McIntyre said, either I raised or help other people raise up to $40 million over something like a decade to work on, so that the funding could be used for education programs. And much of that funding came from either businesses or the foundations set up on the assets of businesses. And then I provide two perspectives. The first, as an applicant, as a money user, as a money needer, what would be important for business to know and what people are in need for. And then the other perspective is that I will talk a little bit about how the grant makers could help the society, because right now I'm program director for the Freeman Foundation. And then so I play both roles. And for the people who need funding, and there are many students, several students here, and eventually you might have that need. And the society has so many kinds of needs. I think for businesses, the easiest way to give back to the society, or maybe one of the most effective ways, is to help with education. Schools would have needs in professional development in all different areas. For example, Tutu. Tutu's product helps with the environment, and teachers would need re-education or in-service training in environmental protection. And then in my case, when I worked as the director for the Asian Studies Outreach Program at the University of Vermont, our mission for that organization was to promote understanding of Vermont people, of Asian countries. And then we looked for funding from different sources, including certain businesses, including IBM and so on, IBM then. And finally, we identified several foundations that were specialized in those areas. For example, the U.S.-Japan Foundation, the Japan Foundation, those are two separate foundations. The Japan Foundation is giving out Japanese government money. The U.S.-Japan Foundation has a board, and each board member would bring in a certain amount of funding, and then they would use that funding to give out. And then certainly the Freeman Foundation. And then schools use the funding from those foundations and from local businesses and so many things to promote teaching and learning about Asia. By the time I left that position 7 years ago, we already covered more than 50% of all schools in Vermont. And then by that I meant those schools were offering curriculum on Asia on a systematic basis. Right now, I work for the Freeman Foundation, and the Freeman Foundation is a family foundation. The Freeman Families Foundation. And then the foundation funding comes from the family asset. Every year, a certain percentage of the family asset will be used for the foundation, and they give grants mainly to promote understanding of Asia in this country. And then grant areas include higher education, K-12 education, internship initiative. I will talk about that later. And then we also give funding to projects of special interest special interest. The internship program initiative started 3 years ago. We give funding to selected colleges, for those colleges to have students to have internships in Asian countries. And then right now, 22 institutions are doing that, and we already doubled the funding for the first round of the institutions, and we are thinking about increasing the funding for the second round. Then, what's the relationship between the Freeman Foundation and giving back to the society by companies, by businesses? The Freeman family is a founding family of the American International Group, AIG, and we all know about. And then over the years, the family accumulated its asset, and then the asset now, part of that is being used to give back to the society. And then certainly, those funding opportunities would be really beneficial to students who will be working in the job market in the next 3 to 5 years, or next 10 years, So we are helping the next generation to understand Asia better, because the students today will not be having my experience, for example. So far, between China and the US, I've only changed jobs 4 times. And then because of my education, mainly, and because of my experience. But students today will have to change jobs probably more frequently than my generation, and they have to work in the international setting. And we are trying to help students prepare for that. That's my presentation. Thank you.
So we have had presentations from 3 very different angles and perspectives of the broad issue of corporate social development, intermixed with sustainable development, intermixed with educational issues, life cycle issues. So I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair and begin asking questions. So perhaps because you sort of bounced off each other in terms of relevance, topical relevance, Habitat for Humanity, most of us assume we know what it is. So you might tell us just in a few words what it does, when it was founded in Atlanta, so I have a vague idea, but not everybody does. And then secondly, how does a company like Toto, born in Japan, where the use of resources has always been emphasized, which inspires, I assume, your corporation, how do you interface with such a company to convince them of the importance of your message? And how does a company like yours, which is a global company, look for worthy projects to sponsor? And then I will turn it over in a third question. How do you convince, as a grantsman, how do you convince a corporate entity to really effectively make a contribution to your foundation or to your educational program, which is organized with a view towards education and social responsibility and educating global citizens of the future? So it's a very broad question, it's a catch-all, but I'm trying to sort of link all 3 of you in some fashion.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Habitat for Humanity was formed by a gentleman by name Millard Fuller. He's from Georgia, Plains, and he started that concept of building, community building, that we all living in a commune, and we together will build our houses. So first I build yours, and then we build his, and so that's a kind of a community building concept that started way back in 1970s. Then he wanted to try that method in other parts of the world, so he went to Africa and he tested out that in a country known as Zaire. The idea was to engage community members to be building together for others like that. And from there it just originated and grown and has started finding opportunities to engage corporate employees. So I'm just bringing it to the CSR aspect, because basically it was community building together. So we found an opportunity out there how well we could bring the corporate employees to be part and parcel of this responsibility movement. So then we have graduated, that's what I would say. Globally, we work in 80 plus countries, and we engage the corporations and employees and university students and other community leaders to come together. So we get that, bring that kind of a feeling of responsibility to the society, and whether it is give back or invest forward. So we have been quite successful in that, and that's what I bring in this kind of a connection.
So how would you choose this particular organization as worthy of your support, both as a corporation in terms of what it does to your branding, but also in terms of extending your hand?
For me, CSR is so important, and it goes far, far beyond. I mean, the end result is you build a better brand, right? That's always a good thing. Right? You build the strength of the brand on the equity of the work that you do and support the foundation of that brand. But what I find most interesting, these are the little stories that come out of Habitat kind of activities. So we've been supporting Habitat for many years, and in fact, we do Habitat Builds. And when we do Habitat Builds, we have a factory where in Morrow, Georgia, we speak 7 different languages in our factory. Many first-generation Americans in our operation. Lots of, not only do we speak 7 different languages, we also speak one more language, and that's Southern Georgia. So folks are always saying, y'all, how's it going to go? We're going to cut that light off, let's get it going. What'd you say? And so when we try to understand how to bring those cultures together, it's one thing to say, we're going to work hard and build a good product. But when you actually say, okay, on this coming Saturday, we're going to get together and we're going to bring team members from the entire bandwidth of our enterprise, from the guys and gals who are in the factory building the product, to the accountants, to the marketing guys, to the salespeople. Everyone will come together. We'll have a team of 25, and we'll climb ladders, we'll help each other. I'll hold the ladder, she'll climb, I'll climb. And as a result of this, you begin to get interactions within the enterprise that wouldn't have happened as a natural result of the enterprise's current configuration. Not only that, but we even recently, last year, we built a Habitat home for one of our employees who was able to benefit from not only the total donation to that, but she, who was a single parent with a couple of children, needed to have a place and was able to engage Habitat in a conversation, became funded and supported and worked her sweat equity along with the build that we did, along with other folks that came in, and built a house for her on the south side of the mountain. This is one of those big benefits because CSR is a whole lot more than just the brand. CSR is the value you build within the company and engage those who are part of that business to be engaged at a visceral level and doing better. And actually, by doing good, you do well as a business.
Just as a follow-up, just time is flying, there's so many questions. In looking at how corporations handle your approach, do you find there are distinctions, differences, distinct differences between an Asia-based multinational and a US-based, North American-based multinational in terms of how they handle CSR, in terms of how you approach that? And then we'll come back to Dr. Juan, but I didn't want to let that opportunity escape of bringing out differences, both you as a user and you as a donor.
Certainly for me as a donor, I work for American companies, German companies, English companies, and now a Japanese company. And it's very interesting. I appreciate the Japanese approach to business because they take a very long view of the business, a very long view that's not just this quarter, next month. They take a very long view and invest in it and want to make sure that we're doing the right kinds of things and engaging in our community. And so I really appreciate that about our Japanese society, our Japanese culture that we have within Twitter.
The response of engaging the employees of the company across the world is the same. It's the kind of, I'll tell you an example, Lehman Brothers in India, when they had to shut down their operation and Nomura took over, and the very first 2 months, they were just really fixing their stuff. and they went for a Habitat for Humanity bill. And the employees are saying that this is something in the last 2 months, the best thing which has happened in my life. Because they take that kind of they see that going out and being, associated with the community gives them a lot of satisfaction, and that's across the world. And these people also, these employees are also becoming extremely productive employees because they get a break. It's just like going for a picnic. And they come back and they say that it's just not this room of St. Regis. It's outside this, there is something else, and they become the advocates of that. And with that, Habitat, just not Habitat, we are making them responsible citizens, and it could be some other NGOs, or it could be they might take some other causes. So it's just not Habitat benefiting, Habitat is also promoting that cause holdership. So that's,
But the
that's
more,
what-
yeah,
Yes, sir.
I see that. So you're saying there's a globalization of the CSR movement,
That's right.
but certainly in areas of CSR which touches upon.
Absolutely. That's what when we talk about that, if it is with Toto, it's an opportunity that we have come closer to Toto in the US, but it just permeates across the globe, and in the next 5 years' time, we see that Toto and Habitat becoming into a joint venture to do something good.
Does tax differentials in terms of write-offs across different countries make a difference in the marginal propinquity of a firm to be generous?
Of course, because tax is one, branding is second, goodwill, that goodwill which we create is, all those goes without. But ultimately, it is that you have initiated it, and you have made that a habit within the organization to do something good. And also you are building up an organizational culture.
Yeah.
It's an organizational culture which comes, and the employees are happy, and the employees goes out. They bring their own money. That's not the employee giving or workplace giving, we say that. Then they go, there's something known as EFR, employee fundraising. They take their own initiatives and raises funds for Habitat or other organizations.
So you're a transformer, a social changer. You educate the corporation.
Absolutely.
In the process.
Absolutely.
Now, Dr. Wang, both as an applicant for grants over your career and as a donor, as it were, or somebody who sort of, as a foundation leader, at both sides of the equation, what are some of the advices you would give to applicants for funding for social purposes, and also to individuals who handle funds that have been given by corporations and family foundations and the like? What are the lessons to be drawn from your experience, if you can distill it in a few minutes?
Sure, I will make it very brief. For applicants for funding or for the recipients of funding from either corporations or from foundations, the most important thing is to honor your words. And in the grant proposal, whatever you write, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 things, you've got to do it. If you don't do it, you always explain what happened, why, and what adjustments you have made. Because for corporations, for foundations, when they make a donation, when they make a grant, usually their principle is, well, making grants for the Freedom Foundation, for example, we believe that making grants is easy. Making grants responsibly is not easy. And therefore, to make a grant, we need to do so much research. We need to find out about the organizations, the people in charge, and so on. And once we approve the grant proposal, that proposal becomes a contract. The contract has two parties. Party 1 gives funding. Party 2, or Party B, needs to be using the funding to fulfill all the commitments made in the grant proposal. Okay. And therefore, if the two parties are both responsible, and then the funding will be used wisely, effectively, and beneficially to the society. Otherwise, I did hear stories of people taking the money without doing much or without doing anything, and the result will be pretty severe. Building the trust between the recipient and the donors is important. Unless that trust is there, things will not work.
Okay, I think it's time for the audience to ask some questions, so please. Yes,
So for Toto, do they operate in India big opportunity for your product, or do they have an Indian strategy?
Yes, we've actually been selling product in India that was produced in Oceania, produced out of Thailand, as well as Indonesia, and then shipped into India. And just this past 4 months ago, we opened our new factory in India. And so we're now producing porcelain products in the country of India for support of their infrastructure. Now, as you know, India has a very diverse and broad infrastructure. And in many cases, open defecation and latrines and into waterways tends to be the norm historically in India. And so what we want to do is we want to try to bring in a better sanitary methodology for handling waste in our toilet systems.
So is it then geared towards bottom of the pyramid, or where are you in the market? Upper
Mid-range,
range, middle,
mid-range
mid-range?
to sort of high end.
Mid to high range.
Yeah, that's right. And so we'll see our first success to build the brand and build the equity in the hotels, in the major cities, in the areas where there is a high urbanization concentration, as well as resorts. We'll be seeing those in hotels as well. Making sure that not only do we take care of all the waste, but we also do it very efficiently from a conservation standpoint.
Joseph, do you want to say, because you have a lot of experience in India, do you want to say some more about the challenge of the issue of waste management in India, human waste management in India?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, Habitat is considered to be a house building organization globally. But we do have our new thinking in terms of how important is water, sanitation, hygiene, which goes hand in hand with the housing course which we are committed in the community development. Now in India, coming specifically to that, India is now leading a major campaign on hygiene, which we call the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, this Clean India movement. Basically just to reduce this open defecation, which has been quite prevalent in India. So Habitat is now taken up that as a new campaign in terms of this we call the campaign as the S2S campaign, that is a sensitized to sanitize. Because sensitized to sanitize campaign is now getting interest from the corporations. Now in India, again, thank you John for that question, that could be the only country now which has made CSR getting mandated means by law. You have to be giving 2% of your PAT, profit after tax. By law, any country, any corporation which has got a $1 million net profit and above is bound to give 2% of their PAT on CSR. And the innovations of the Indians are quite good because they will create their own NGO. The companies will create their own foundation or NGO and transfer that money out there. No, the government said you can put N number of money into your foundation, but this 2% has to go to any other organization. So it has really opened up an avenue for $3 billion annually to be on CSR money going into from Indian companies for Indian social development. And organizations like Habitat is going to benefit out. Why I'm telling that, that was something which has started way back in the last century. From there, that awareness, like organizations like Habitat, which has been brought into that market space, made that government to make a rule out there, and that's because of that, a lot of NGOs, like-minded, good organizations, accountable, transparent NGOs are getting benefited out of that.
Two follow-up questions, and I think we can go longer.
Yeah.
The first one relates to transparency.
Yeah.
In the context of differential transparency levels in different countries,
Yes.
Are these funds, these profit after tax BAT funds levied, are they secure in terms of their ultimate use? And then the second one is an optimization question for a corporation like Toto to make a donation. What percentage of the actual dollar donated or transferred is actually used for the benefit of end users, and how much is an administrative overhead charge?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much. In terms of transparency and accountability, Habitat have an internal audit globally by organizations like it could be a PwC or a KPMG and also we get an external audit by another person. It could be, if the internal audit is by KPMG, the external audit would be by PwC. Okay, that is what our level or our benchmark of transparency across the world, and it varies from country to country. Globally, we assign these kind of norms. In terms of the funds invested, the dollars which goes to the people, we have from country to country, we have a range of 10 to 17% of that which goes. Some, more, that's a kind of administrative expenses, whereas international, even the UN system and others, you can always use 25%. But we are very good in terms of that our use of money in administration, other expenses, we are actually tight. And we do have that kind of extremely good financial advisors within the organization, as well as we employ external people.
I'd like to direct a quick question to Dr. Wang. Your experience in China, PRC, do you find a readiness to corporate entities, whether they are state-owned corporations or private corporations, to be generous and give? Is there a tradition in China of quote-unquote returning, or is it all devolved to the central government?
That's a very good question. First of all, the money is there. State-owned enterprises or private enterprises, Chinese businesses just have so many different kinds of resources to give. However, the problem now, the situation is that those corporations, private or state-owned, do give when certain things happen. For example, the major earthquake that happened in southern China, and all those enterprises will give a large amounts of funding. To me, that's Rwanda. The problem now is that there is no mechanisms. There are no mechanisms for people to make donations or to make major donations or small donations. The only state-run organization is the Red Cross. Supposedly it's non-profit. However, supposedly it's non-governmental, but in China, that's actually a government agency. And in recent years, the Red Cross of China has had quite a few scandals, and there are all kinds of ugly things going on with the funding that people donated, usually for disasters. And therefore, the reputation of Red Cross in China is pretty much at the bottom now. And then there have been quite a few, going back to the Red Cross, I said that actually it's a government official because all those leaders in Red Cross are appointed by the government. And then in recent years, smaller private funds have been created, and for special interest. For example, a well-known singing star, a singer, and she and her husband, a movie star, had gave birth to a girl. That girl has a physical problem, and then they created a private fund, just for the country to deal with that physical or health problem. But those things are going on quite commonly in recent countries, but the efforts are not large enough. There are no mechanisms for private people or public or state-owned enterprises to really give funding to the society. And compared with the mature mechanisms, systems in this country to give back with funding, with cash, let's start it about over 100 years ago now. China has not even started yet. I have been invited to write articles about the American systems for foundation, mainly for foundation, for giving back to the society, the beliefs behind it, and so on. And then certain concepts are just too new to China yet. Even though there is an old tradition that when you become well-to-do, when you become a wealthy person, you go back to your village and help build the road and help build bridges. Those people are still doing. Those things people are trying to do to help with their local communities, including helping their schools. However, at the national level, the efforts are not sufficient. And then going back to Dr. McIntyre's question, whether or not the government should be involved in that, the government has to take the initiative to create the mechanisms, because in China, you have to rely on the government. Yeah, unless you just want to start something and that thing disappears tomorrow. You want something to last in China, you work with the government.
Thank you so much. That's a very enlightening question. It opens a universe of other questions. The Western tradition of giving China its controversial nature in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and then the birth of China's own CSR NGOs, which are in the process of coming to life, but have not fully bloomed yet, but have a lot of potential.
Yeah, it has a lot of potential. The real question is that the middle class of China needs to be matured. They need to grow into maturity. Right now they have money and that's all they have.
Okay. Well, one last question from the audience and then it's on to the reception and we will close this very good panel. I wish it could last a little longer, but one last question. Anyone? So, you know, questions from each other?
On toilets? What a topic of conversation.
This is a company that has made a footprint in Georgia in terms of branding. I mean, if you're from Georgia, you all know about Toto. So, your biggest factories are in Lawrenceville.
Our biggest factory is in Morrow, Georgia.
Morrow,
Georgia, here in the United States and we're very Asian-centric, so we've got huge factories all throughout Japan, China, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand. But we're growing significantly here in the United States.
And Habitat's headquarters, corporate headquarters, is where?
It's here.
That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you very much, panel and panelists. We are really deeply in your debt for your time and insights. Where is the reception?
I think it's downstairs.
Okay, I don't know.
I presume downstairs.
Thank you, audience, for being here. Let's adjourn to the reception. Thank you.
Hey.
Come and visit with us. Yeah. Sorry, Joseph's. I think he's used to handling.
I have a question. For you.
Yeah. It depends on your interaction business is not federal. It's interspersed. Wait till we're talking, right? I was literally I want this guy to stop. So we can try and find a way. He was
sometimes I do give lectures. You miss that. Sorry.
He don't know exactly. Yeah,
he's so much fun.
I've heard something was called a GEO, government organized.
You will have an organization. If you have to grow in the international sense, and usually
And you have a Communist Party. appreciate it as well.
That's what happened. Red Cross is the president.
对，结束了，谢谢，再见。
Here's the floor, you mentioned the first, second, and third, so it's amazing.
What's that? Oh,
who are not going to benefit
Basically, they are also good philanthropists, but they put that long-term vision of, they call it the social interest. So, they push the vision. It's the money going to CSH, but being strategically invested. That's what CSH
I was telling her a little bit about some
And we are doing this financial literacy. They say that they're also smart. CSR money. They get the tax benefit, they get the brand building, and also it's a long-term shot. I mean,